What's up, Falcons fans, and welcome to episode 4 of Talkin Birdy, an Atlanta Falcons podcast powered by SportsTalkATL.com. I am your host, Matt Carrolley. You can find me on Twitter at Matt Carrolley, Carrolley spelled K-A-R-O-L-Y. And tonight I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Jake Gordon, who makes his return after a week off, and Alex Lord from the Sports Talk ATL team. How we doing tonight, fellas?
Great.
I'm doing great. Happy post-finals week.
Yeah, and as we recorded last week's episode, me and Alex, as everyone knows, the schedule release came out, the 2021 Atlanta Falcons schedule. So we're going to spend a good chunk of today's episode going through it. And as we did on last week's episode, Alex and I kind of gave our initial reaction since we did know the week 1 matchup ahead of time. They're going to be facing the Philadelphia Eagles at home in week 1. So I want to get your thoughts, Jake. What do you think of that first game? Do you like that opponent? Do you think it's a good first one? What are your thoughts on facing the Eagles in week 1?
I think it's about as ideal as you can get. I know they had Detroit on the schedule. Maybe it would have been nice to play Detroit week 1. I think they're going to be pretty bad this year, even though they've given the Falcons fits in the past. But, it seemed like Doug Peterson was the only person in that building who really believed in Jalen Hurts. And I don't really know if anybody within the Eagles organization is still really married to the idea of Jalen Hurts being their quarterback. And so I guess it'll be interesting to see. Who knows? I think Jalen Hurts is a gamer. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a great guy. But I don't really know how he's going to work for Philly. I think the Falcons definitely have the advantage. They have a bad secondary. Their offensive line has gotten worse in recent years. Jalen Hurts, pretty much, you can call him a rookie quarterback pretty much. He's made, 4 starts? I don't think it's out of the realm of the possibility that the Falcons blow him out. But who knows? Maybe they'll surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the Falcons won like 34-13. I said it last week. I thought playing a quarterback, making his 5th career start against a Dean Pease-led defense who's, made a career out of frustrating even the all-time greats and Tom Brady. I agree. I think it's as good of a matchup outside of maybe the Detroit Lions, who Pro Football Focus has ranked as the worst roster in football, and the Eagles aren't too far behind at number 30. So, yeah, it's a great first one, in my opinion, to hopefully get in the win column, because in week 2, it doesn't get much tougher than going on the road and facing the defending Super Bowl champions, which is what the Falcons will have to do. So, that's the week 2 opponent. Week 3, they got the New York Giants on the road. Washington football team is the week 4 opponent at home. So I guess we'll start with, that first quadrant of games outside of, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Alex, I'll toss it over to you. Do you see this Falcons team potentially getting off to a 3-1 start, or where do you see them maybe getting tripped up, if anything?
I have, that we'll talk about later in the show, but I'll say it right now. I think the Washington football team will be a great, test. They're going to be competing for their division and likely a playoff spot. Even with Ryan Fitzpatrick or whoever they have, playing quarterback next year, that defense is legit. It's a top 5 unit. So to kind of go from Philadelphia, which is going to not be a good defense, Tampa Bay came on at the end of last year, but for most of the year, they were not that good. I mean, just an average unit, really. The Giants will be halfway decent, but the Washington football team is the exact matchup I'm looking for in terms of, can Arthur Smith beat good defenses? Because, not to say that he's going to have to, him and Matt Ryan are going to have to do it, but if they're going to, have any sort of success, maybe going 3-1, I would say, they could, top Philly and the Giants, but I think 2-2 is more realistic. I think they smack Philly, just like you said, but I think Tampa smacks them just because I think that, they're just not going to be ready for something, and Tampa Bay is probably going to come in hot, but I think that 4th week is going to be a really good game, just based on, defensive scheme that they have and what Arthur Smith wants to do. If he can't establish the run, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day for everybody. So that's the one I look to. But
I think you're right. I think weeks 2 and 4 are definitely a litmus test, at least for the offense, because again, Tampa Bay's defense is legit with Todd Bowles running the show. And then, I think if Washington gets back to the playoffs, it's going to have a lot to do with an ascending defense. And then, Ryan Fitzpatrick, as his career usually is, he's the ultimate wild card. How many weeks are you going to get the Fitz magic for? Because again, he can prove that he can lead a team to a lot of wins, at least early on in the season, and then he starts to fade off. So I don't know if it's a good or bad thing getting them early in the season, but I agree. I think those are going to be games that kind of show the Falcons' mettle and if they're a legit playoff contender. Jake, do you have any disagreements with that first 4 assessment?
No, actually, I'm probably a little bit higher on Washington football team than most. I love a lot of their defense. I love Jamin Davis going into the draft. He was my LB1. You have Chase Young, you have Matt Ioannidis, you have Deron Payne, you have Jonathan Allen, you have Montez Sweat. They have a really good defense. And, Terry McLaurin on the offensive side of the ball, Antonio Gibson on the offensive side of the ball. Let's not forget, Taylor Heineke gave Tom Brady the best game that he saw last postseason altogether, including the Super Bowl. But I do want to talk about the Giants for a second. Just because Daniel Jones isn't, I guess, an outstanding quarterback, as you would say, I really don't think people should overlook the Giants. I think the Giants do have a pretty good team. They added Kenny Golladay this offseason. They've added a couple more pieces. They're not a team to overlook. I think Joe Judge, at first, I kind of thought he was going to be like a Matt Patricia, like a guy that tried to come in and be Bill Belichick. That's not Bill Belichick. But he kind of turned it around at the end of the season. Really, let's not forget, if Philly hadn't completely thrown the last game of the season, the Giants would have made the playoffs. And I just don't think they're a bad team. Like the NFC East, they're the butt of a lot of jokes. The Eagles should be pretty bad, but I don't think the Giants are going to be that bad. I don't think Washington football team is going to be that bad. I think the Falcons are going to beat Tampa Bay 1 out of 2 times. I don't know if it's going to be week 2. I don't think it'll be week 2. So, if this team does start 1-3, it's not crazy to say they're not playing bad teams. The Giants and Washington may look bad on paper, but they're not bad teams.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
I agree. The 1-3 is not. I think 1-3 is much more likely than 3-1. I mean, it has to be. But
well, I'm glad we brought that up because I'm going to take the conversation. I'm going to kind of speed through the rest of these games because if the Falcons do start 1-3, the talk in the media right now is that last 4 or 5 game stretch is the toughest stretch on the Falcons schedule. So again, just to run through it, in week 5, they're going to have the Jets in that London game, and then they're going to have a week 6 bye. They go to Miami after the bye. They got Carolina at home in week 8. They got New Orleans in week 9 in New Orleans, and then they go the Dan Quinn revenge game in week 10 in Dallas. And then short week, they got the New England Patriots, which not looking forward to that game, and I'll give my reason why in a little bit, in week 11 on Thursday Night Football. And then they got Jacksonville in Jacksonville. And then starts this stretch that everyone's kind of making a big deal about. But again, I don't necessarily see it, but I want to get your guys' thoughts. They face Tampa Bay at home in week 13. Then they go on the road to Carolina in week 14. Then they travel again, the San Francisco 49ers, week 15, and finish up against Detroit at home, Buffalo in January, one of the few cold games that they'll have in week 17, early January after the new year, and then close the season at home against New Orleans. So again, if what you guys are saying comes to fruition and they potentially do start 1-3, do you think that last game stretch will completely take them out and not make them a playoff team? Alex, I'll let you go first on that one.
So I don't think they're a playoff team next year just because you got silly divisions like the NFC West who have 3 playoff teams. The Cardinals could probably win the NFC East if they were in there. The NFC West is just littered. So those wild card games are going to have to be 10, 11 win teams. And I don't see it like that. But you can count that San Francisco game essentially as, it's not a division game, but it will impact the playoffs. Whether, San Francisco is leading the West or not, I mean, it's still going to be extremely important. So I see where, people are getting this idea that it's important because, there's several division games. Buffalo's a tough game, really doesn't mean anything. I mean, it does mean something, but it's in Detroit's not going to have even a thought about the playoffs. So that, there's really just that Bucks game, and then I think Carolina is going to be, dog shit this year. I think that, I don't think they're good at all. So it'll be that Tampa game, New Orleans, and then depending if San Francisco's leading the division, that could be 3 games in 5 weeks where I could see it. But I think the meat of it's in the middle is where I think that it's going to come down. If they're going to make the playoffs, I mean, they're going to have to go on a run of winning, 5 of the 6 weeks in the middle of the game, in the middle of the season, around the bye week, in my opinion. But I think people are just pushing the silly little narrative about just trying to make the most money. The highlight games are in the later half of the year, always division games. San Francisco is one of the biggest games in Buffalo. Those TV markets are huge. So I think that's why people are saying it. But I mean, in reality, Buffalo has, almost nothing to do with the Falcons getting to the playoffs. Like it does, if they lost that game and by God, they dropped to 8-9 instead of 9-8, that could be it. But I just don't see it. I don't see why everybody's freaking out about the last 5 weeks. I mean, I could be wrong. I really don't. I don't see it. And I hate when people talk about schedules in like definitive ways. Like, what if Josh Allen's hurt? What if San Francisco's ass? What if Tom Brady gets hurt? None of those games will be as important. It's silly to say. When we get to that New England game and the Jacksonville game, then when you're like, oh, okay, never mind, this is a big deal, you wouldn't have known that before the season. You're just, saying it in the moment. That's how schedules should be. I'm like the furthest guy from looking at schedules. And I think a lot of coaches are like this. They're not. Arthur Smith is not looking at the last 5 weeks going, oh, yeah, that's going to be it. Those are the ones that are going to be tough. I mean, he's worried about Philadelphia.
So not to cut you off here, but basically what you're saying is we're wasting our time talking about this schedule in 2021 now, right?
Yeah. I think what's a better conversation
right.
have is talking about future predictions. So, which is a silly thing to kind of maybe say, but Vegas win totals is a way better thing to, talk about than last season's win percentage. Yeah. Offensive and defensive efficiencies are much better metrics to measure it by. I looked up, the Falcons defense has the 11th easiest schedule in terms of opponents' offensive efficiency. That's great news. That's something that's tangible that you can say that's good. Our defense is probably not the strength of our team. It's going to have an easier schedule based on those projections. Offense, 24th hardest based on that same metric. So the offense will play, what that basically means is we're going to be playing better defenses than we will be playing offenses. So that's what I think is, an important aspect. You got to look at it. I mean, I get the narrative that, the 5 games at the end of the season are what matters, but I'm not against it. I guess I'm very pessimistic about this topic, but I'm curious to see what you think. Or do you think it is important? I mean,
well, you made a lot of great points as far as, using winning percentages from the previous season doesn't really amount to much because from year to year, there's so much turnover, so much changes. My 2 cents on the last 5 games, really the only one that concerns me is the week 17 at Buffalo. Because I'm with Jake. I think they will split against Tampa Bay. And I really think winning that week 13 game, which is the one I would put my money on that they can win, that'll really get them going, in my opinion, for a stretch run that includes a very winnable Carolina game. I think it all comes down to Sam Darnold. I really like what the Panthers have done in the offseason, particularly in the draft. But if Sam Darnold is the Sam Darnold we saw in New York, none of that matters.
Yeah.
And they're going to be picking in the top 10 of the draft yet again. So not really concerned about that, because I do think Sam Darnold is going to be Sam Darnold. Week 15, I don't think San Francisco is any better than the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm not really concerned about that one. Week 16 against Detroit, we talked about them. They could be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And then again, it's the Week 17 game. And then, to talk a little bit about the Saints, I do think they're in for some regression. I think, again, the Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill experiment, I think, will only last so long for them. I don't think those guys are the answer. I'll be shocked if Sean Payton would deserve to be in the Coach of the Year. It pains us to say that as Falcons fans, but Sean Payton would deserve to be in the Coach of the Year consideration if he gets the Saints to be 11-5 again, with those two for a full season as quarterback. So for me, I think they're due for a, classic 7-9 or, maybe even 6-10 type New Orleans Saints season. So again, I'm not too concerned about the end stretch. Again, you made great points about the meat of the schedule in the middle. I think that'll determine more. But that's why I come back to that first 4 or 5 games, and I'm like, this is a real opportunity to get off to a hot start. And one of the things to watch, and one of the things that I think is going to be truly important, is do the Falcons, with a new play caller, can they get going early? There's always this talk of Matt Ryan first year with a coordinator starting slow, building that chemistry. I don't think it's going to be as much of a transition because of the type of offense that Smith's going to integrate. It's very familiar to Matt. It's basically a carbon copy of what they did in 2016. But this first 4 or 5 games, as we talked about the defenses they're playing, I think will go a long way in proving that. Jake, what are your thoughts on that final 5 games or the schedule as a whole?
Well, it's funny because you talk about the final 5 games, and just like it's one of those things where I look at the schedule and I just see red everywhere I go. I just get angry. You start in Week 10, New Orleans. Obviously, I hate New Orleans. I hate the Saints. Their fans stink. They don't shower. They all smell bad. I hate Saints fans. And then you got Dallas Week 11, and I see Dan Quinn and his stupid bald head and his terrible decisions, and it just makes me even more mad. And then I see the Patriots and their idiot fans who still hold on to 28-3 like it happened last week, and I just want to wring their necks too. And then I see Jacksonville, and I see Urban Meyer and his stupid face, and I see Tim Tebow, and I want to wring their necks too. And then I see Tom Brady and his stupid butt chin, and I want to wring his neck too. And then I see Carolina, who we literally own, and their fans love to talk, and I want to wring their necks too. And then I see Kyle Shanahan, who's responsible for 28-3 for the most part, and I want to wring his neck too. Detroit, I guess they're fine, but really,
for 1 week, right? You get a break for 1 week, I guess.
Exactly. Jokes aside, I think it's a decent test. San Francisco is obviously a team that had trouble with injuries. Last year, they were missing Nick Bosa. I think they missed Nick Bosa all year. I think they had Armstead out all year. A handful of other guys that were injured. I think they'll be better. I don't know if they'll be back to Super Bowl caliber, but I do think they'll be better in 2021. And Buffalo, I'll dive into this later, but then I think that's the toughest game on Atlanta's schedule. And then New Orleans, I don't even care what happens for the rest of the year, man. I want to beat the Saints. That gives me more satisfaction than anything. That is a type of hatred you can't teach. I just want to beat New Orleans so bad. And I don't know if Terry Fontenot shares that same conviction that I do. I don't know if Arthur Smith shares that same conviction, but I promise the players do. And that Week 18 matchup, especially if the Falcons are in the thick of things, which I certainly hope they are, it'll be juicy for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up that stretch of games and the hatred that comes with that stretch of games. That New England one, I guess the reason I'm least looking forward to that one, New England in prime time, you already know how many times the Super Bowl 51 references are coming out. I mean, I'm sure someone on Twitter will suggest doing a drinking game. That's a very poor decision if someone elects to play that game. But yeah, again, I think this is a schedule that, despite it's getting talked about as being an easy schedule based solely on the win percentages from the previous season, for me, I think it's a gettable schedule, because I don't think the NFC East, which again, part of the reason it is the third easiest schedule is because of those 4 games. I can't see the NFC East improving greatly from the previous season. Like, maybe they'll make incremental improvements, but not to the point that it scares me, where I don't see them potentially winning 3 of 4, if not sweeping the 4. Again, depending on Dallas. Dallas is the one, I guess, wild card of the bunch with Dak Prescott returning. I'm hoping the Dan Quinn that we saw in Atlanta coordinating defenses is the same one that's going to be coordinating Dallas's defense, because if so, I think we're going to have a field day, and that's going to be fun on Twitter. But yeah, for me, again, and I guess maybe we'll segue into some predictions, score predictions or record predictions, which again, as Alex so eloquently put, is probably a fruitless venture at this point. Probably makes no sense to do. But for me, I think they can, and again, not even trying to be a homer here, but I think they can go 11-6. I really am tremendously high. For those that follow me on Twitter have seen this, I'm tremendously high on who they brought in to lead this team in the future. Coaching matters. I know it's a simple cliche to say, but coaching matters. And you go back and watch, and there's a lot of analysts on Twitter that post clips of games, and some of the clips you see out of the Falcons from that previous season, on the defensive side of the ball, even on the offensive side of the ball, it didn't make much sense. And again, I think they're going to be a much better coached unit across the board, and the talent's there. I've said this for a long time. I don't think the Falcons have ever had a talent issue. I think a lot of their issues over the last several seasons has been coaching, and I think we're gonna learn this season whether that's true or not. Because again, for me, this team was 7-9 last year, 8-8. Their record was 4-12, but they very easily should have been 8-8. And I think with the coaching upgrades, they can find themselves at 11-6. So that's my record prediction. Jake, I'll let you tell your record prediction now.
Yeah, I got 10-7, and I'll give a quick little breakdown. I got us beating Philly. I got us beating the Jets in London, even though the Falcons have had problems in London. And then I think they can win at least one of Miami, New York, and Washington. Miami's a tough customer, but I think one of those games they can pull out. And that's starting the season, not exactly on a great note. But I think they can take 2 from Carolina. I think they'll sweep Carolina. Nothing's the same. We own them. New Orleans, I think they'll take at least 1 from New Orleans. I got them penciled in for 1. I think they'll take 1 from Tampa Bay. I think they will beat Dallas or New England. The football gods will not allow us to be that happy that we can take revenge on Dan Quinn and Bill Belichick in one season. And I think they'll beat Jacksonville, and I think they'll beat Detroit. So I got them for 10-7. That's respectable. And you talk about coaching matters. I couldn't agree more. A lot of people really don't understand that. I think it's still like middle school, where if you have the biggest and fastest and strongest players, then you're going to win games no matter what. Look, I'm a washed-up high school intramural quarterback. I know more about calling an offense than Dirk Cutter could ever dream about knowing. Look, that guy is running 2 route concepts in the end zone with nobody getting open. He doesn't know anything. Like, I don't understand how he's employed. I don't understand how he got a head coaching job. He can't run the ball. He can't establish a play action. He can't draw up route concepts. What's an offensive coordinator good for? I don't know why Dirk Cutter got to hang around as long as he did. I don't know if Arthur Blank thought he was a good guy. I don't know if Thomas Dimitroff thought he was a good guy. I don't know if Dan Quinn thought he was a good guy, but he sucked at his job. And now that Arthur Smith is in the fold, I saw what he's done in Tennessee. I saw what he turned A.J. Brown into. I saw what he turned Corey Davis into. Corey Davis was widely regarded as one of the biggest busts in recent memory for the NFL draft. I saw what he turned Jonnu Smith into. I saw what he turned Ryan Tannehill into. Everybody thought Ryan Tannehill was awful. He was a top 5 quarterback in efficiency this past few years. Arthur Smith is going to have this offense humming at efficiency, and everybody's going to say, oh, where did the Falcons come from? And I'll say, yeah, they got rid of that clown Dirk Cutter, and they're right back in it. So I got 10-7. I think it's a respectable record. I think that's good enough to at least make the playoffs as a wild card, maybe win the division, maybe.
Love it. Love everything about that. Alex, what do you got for us? I know you said kind of at the top you don't think they're a playoff team. Where does their record fall then?
So I have 8-9 or 9-8, and that might not seem good from, y'all's prediction of 11 or 10 wins. But if you base it off of 4 wins last season, that's 5 additional wins that, coaching changed. The personnel didn't change that much. There is definitely some roster turnover on the defensive side of the ball, a couple pieces on offense. But for the most part, it's still the engines that make the Falcons go is Matt Ryan, Grady Jarrett's still there, Deion Jones is still there. I mean, Julio's still here for now, Calvin's still here. I just think, part of me wants to believe in, what Arthur Smith is going to do. And I do believe he will. Let me preface saying this, that I do think he will succeed, but I don't think it'll happen in the first year. And it's very rare if it happens. If everything clicks in the first year, it's, that's incredible. It's just, I get the fact that Matt Ryan has played in a system similar to this, but that's only one piece of the puzzle, Matt Ryan has to figure out Arthur Smith's tendencies, and Arthur Smith has to figure out Matt Ryan's tendencies. It took a full year, a full season, and a full offseason for Kyle Shanahan and Matt Ryan, who were two, extremely meticulous and steadfast guys. It took them that long to get on the same page. So, I don't think Arthur Smith is lazy or anything. I think it'll take about that same amount of time. I think the second year in this offense is going to be something special. I don't think the first year will be. I think that you can look at Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. They went 13-3 in Matt LaFleur's first year, which I'm not saying, is out of the question with the Falcons. They could surprise, shock the world. But their offensive numbers weren't even that good. I mean, they were average. Most quarterbacks would consider it a great year, but for Aaron Rodgers, it was an average year. It's similar for Matt Ryan. I think he'll have a good year this year, but he's not going to be even close to 2016. And I don't think the defense has the personnel right now. Dean Pease is going to be fighting with one hand behind his back in some games. I mean, seriously, a couple injuries at a couple positions, and we're in deep shit on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, AJ Terrell goes down, we're not in a good situation. We'll be trotting out Kendall Sheffield and watching, offenses go up and down the field. So, obviously the personnel isn't quite where it needs to be. With that said, I think it's in the right direction. Last year, it felt like it was like an endless fall. The fall never stopped. We kept falling. It feels like this offseason, Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot have stopped, and we're ascending at this point. So 8 and 9 wins for a first-year regime is not bad, especially after 4 wins last year. Obviously, you guys are a little bit higher on them than I am, but we're still a couple games off, really. Even on the lower side, 8 and 9, I'm only a couple games away from y'all. So it's not out of the question that they pull off, a couple of wins and get out of somewhere that they shouldn't have. It's entirely possible. They could go to Buffalo and win that game. I mean, who knows? It's just, like I said earlier, predictions are hard. I think it's easier to go, look at the Vegas numbers. 7.5 is the magic number. So, Vegas thinks that it's better. There's better odds that the Falcons will finish 8 and 9, than anything above that. 7.5 wins is the magic number. So you guys are way over that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, temper expectations, Falcons fans. I mean, we're going in the right direction, but I don't think we're there just yet. There's a lot of positives to talk about, but I don't know, 10 double-digit wins in the first season. I'll do something crazy. We can make a bet next episode.
Definitely want it to happen.
Yeah,
look,
something silly.
To recap, we got me on the high end of 11 wins. Alex is on the low end, level-headed, 8 and 9 wins. And Jake's right in the middle. So I think Jake's probably going to be the lucky winner. It's going to split the difference. And I like that 10 and 7. I see that quite a bit out there. Even though I know Vegas is at 7.5. The thing with Vegas, and not to get off on a tangent on that, but they're following the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's putting that money down? Are these actual analysts, or are these just big spenders that, hey, they just have money to throw around? So to use the Vegas odds, I like the metrics that you tossed out, earlier, Alex, as far as defensive efficiency metrics and offensive efficiency metrics of the opponents. I think that's going to be more telling and more conducive to, predicting the future. But that's our schedule breakdown, guys. So we're going to toss it over. Rookie minicamp week was this past weekend. Not a lot to take away from something like that. It's rookies, most guys that aren't going to make the roster in shorts and no pads. There were a couple things. Again, watching Kyle Pitts move just effortlessly, a true unicorn in every sense of the word. It's going to be fun to see what Arthur Smith does and how he moves him around in the offense. The other takeaway from the actual football, Darren Hall getting into the action, flashing his ball skills that we talked about on last week's show when we broke down the defensive prospects. The way I put it, I think he's on the Michael Walker right place, right time progression when it comes to taking away the football. So again, a guy that might have a similar type of role where he mixes in certain packages, or he potentially continues to flash and maybe wins one of those starting outside cornerback spots opposite AJ Terrell. But for me, I kind of want to talk mostly about some of the assistant coaching interviews that kind of took place over the week. And I think that's kind of, there's more to take away from stuff like that when you get to know, philosophies of these new coaches on the staff, and as they talk about certain players that they brought in. And there's a couple notable ones that I want to highlight. And then you guys can, if you want to throw out any of your takeaways on the assistant coaching interviews or these particular takeaways. But for me, I watched, Ted Monticino, outside linebacker coach interview, and Frank Bush, inside linebacker coach interview. And when it comes to Bush was a great one to watch, by the way. Athens native, talked about returning home and what a joy it would be to win a Super Bowl for the team that he grew up watching. So definitely a guy to root for, one of my favorite coaches now on this staff for that reason alone. But he talked about Brandon Copeland, and I know, Alex, we talked about on last week's episode, I had pegged Brandon Copeland as an edge defender in this defense. I thought, his body type and kind of what he's done in the past would lead to that. But it does sound like he's going to be the fourth off-ball linebacker, and he's going to spend most of his time in the inside linebacker room, along with Deion Jones, Foye Oluokun, and Michael Walker. So, again, that's just something I wanted to point out because I know we talked about, there seems to be a hole at the fourth linebacker spot, and could an undrafted guy or could a free agent off the street potentially be signed later. But right now, it does sound like Copeland is on the inside track for that. And then when it comes to Ted Monticino, his interview, he talked about Kiki Mingo, what he's meant to him in his career, since Mingo has been with him in 2 other stops, and this is the 3rd stop now. And then he talked about Stephen Means, who, I didn't recall this, but, it is true. Means had been with Pease and Monticino in Baltimore from 2014 to 2015. So, now it's even less of a surprise. I was hoping they would bring him back anyways, but now I see exactly why they did that. And again, it's not great that these 2 guys are near the top of the depth chart on edge, but it does sound like they have a real plan for them. And I would expect Mingo and Means to be, the edge 2 and edge 3 respectively. But, want to get your guys' thoughts. Did you have any takeaways from rookie minicamp week, or what are your thoughts on those 2 takeaways from those interviews? Jake, I'll let you go first.
Oh yeah, just an interesting tidbit about Frank Bush. Whenever Greg Williams was fired with the Jets last year, don't quote me on this, but I believe they had a top 10 defense after Greg Williams was let go and Frank Bush started calling the defense. They did beat the Rams, who they were a playoff team last year. So I really liked the hire when it was made at the time. If he sees something in these guys, I believe Copeland came from the Jets. If he sees something in these guys, I trust his instincts. I trust the Falcons to get the most out of guys that may not be big time, brand names, and that's really what it's all about. I think a lot of these undrafted free agents. I said this, from the jump. I said the Falcons are probably going to have the biggest undrafted free agent class, and I believe they did. I don't think anybody got past 20, but I think they're going to get the most out of a lot of these guys. There's some interesting names. They already let Eli Howard go, but they're definitely gonna try everybody out. They're gonna get a look, and they're gonna let the best man win. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I think I've been saying this, and this is another reason why I'm bullish on the defense, at least being an average unit. Which will be a tangible upgrade because Dean Pease has made a career out of doing more with less. And again, he's a schemer. He's not just a guy that relies on the individual talent, which again, I feel like that's what Dan Quinn's resume was built off of, was the individual talent that he had in Seattle. And when he didn't have it in Atlanta, you saw the wheels start to fall off. So I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue for Dean Pease. Alex did bring up a point though about, the depth is lacking. So if a guy goes down, there will be question marks, but if anyone can handle something like that, again, it's a guy with a resume who's been a coordinator for 15, 20 years in the NFL alone, like Dean Pease. So I think even though, they didn't sign anybody with brand name recognition, I do think they have a plan for these guys, and they're going to get the most out of them and put them in positions to succeed. Alex, what were your takeaways from this past week rookie minicamp?
First, Kiki Mingo is a brand name. Let's just get that out of the way. And
he's a brand name like Trenton Thompson.
Former first-round pick, 6th overall. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, him and Trenton Thompson, they're both big brand names. Yeah, but go ahead.
I guess because he's an LSU alum, right? That's why you're
right, yeah.
Also okay. I didn't get that at first.
But I think that the only thing I really took away from Monachino's interview was he basically eliminated positions, effectively. Basically said that it just depends on the front they're going to do. And I think that everybody who covers the Falcons should kind of just start talking about them as defensive linemen and keep them in that generality. He just mentioned some guys who were going to have their hand in the dirt in 3-man fronts and stand up in 4-man fronts. He was just talking about Steven Means. He'll probably have his hand in the dirt on third downs, and he could be standing up on first and second down. So I thought that was interesting that he basically confirmed what me and you were talking about last episode, Matt, that, there's going to be purely outside guys and, probably Kiki and, Dante Fowler. And then there'll be those tweeners, Steven Means and a couple of the other rookies who are going to play edge and then also play on the interior. And then you'll have guys like Grady and Snott who are only going to play on the interior. Smith said something about Avery Williams, which is not shocking. This isn't even news, but I want to see somebody play offense, defense, and special teams other than Taysom Hill in the NFL and get some recognition. I mean, what Taysom Hill does is incredible, but I mean the crush that the media has on such an average player is beyond me. So I just want somebody to go do it and show the entire media that there are plenty of people who can do it. But Smith said that Avery Williams probably will just be on defense and special teams first, which is not news. I mean, that's ridiculous to expect a rookie to start taking meetings on all three phases of the game, but it will be interesting in the next couple of years to see if he can develop into a two-way player. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I like the point too, talking about the multiplicity, flexibility of the D lineman, and you used the word last week calling it a fluid situation, and from week to week, I mean, this defense could look entirely different based on the personnel that they use, and they might look like an amoeba defense where you don't know. Again, and I think this is Dean's point and what he talked about. I keep bringing this up in the press conference. You don't know where guys are going to come from, but they're going to come from all different angles throughout the course of the game and throughout the course of weeks. So it's going to be fun to watch. And again, that's why, I keep saying there's palpable buzz here because I do think this team can be very exciting. I think they can be one of the more exciting teams in the NFL this season if everything clicks. And I think that's the biggest thing is how quickly can it click? Because I do think it's going to click eventually. Maybe it's not in year one, like Alex is saying. But again, I think they have the right pieces in place, the right coaches in place. You got to remember, Dean Pease is in his early 70s. He's not looking to kind of be on a rebuilding situation. Obviously, he's got to get his guys in there, and they're slowly working them in. But, they're looking to compete right now. And I think everything that they've done to this point, and some might disagree with this statement, especially leading up to the draft, but everything they've done, I think, is with the intention of winning early. So we'll see what happens. But the Avery Williams point is also a great segue because to finish the show, I want to play kind of a bold prediction game here. We're going to stay strictly with rookies, but we're going to give 3 predictions, what we consider bold predictions. And then the other 2 hosts are going to rank them in terms of do they think it's a cool take, a lukewarm take, and a hot take. So I'm going to go first, and my first take involves Avery Williams. And I think Avery Williams can be a Pro Bowler in year one. I think it'll be on special teams, of course. But again, I absolutely love this pick. It really kind of changed my mood as far as how the first couple picks prior to that on day 2 and early day 3 went. But again, they got a dog that made an instant impact, every year on special teams, whether it was as a returner, as a guy coming off the edge blocking punts. And it's not uncommon to see rookies make the Pro Bowl as a special teamer in year one. I know the Saints, I forget the guy's name, but I know he made the Pro Bowl as a returner in year one, and I believe there's precedent on it in the past. So for me, my first take is Avery Williams as a Pro Bowler on special teams in year one. My other take is that one draft pick from the 2021 class will not make the 53-man roster. And my third take is that Jalen Mayfield will not be one of the 5 starting offensive linemen in 2021. Alex, I'll let you go first. How would you rank those 3 takes?
Okay, so we'll do Jalen Mayfield as a cool take.
Okay.
Avery Williams Pro Bowler as a warm take. And then the one draft pick as a hot take. I mean, if a draft pick doesn't make the 53-man roster in the first year, everybody should be up in arms. Yeah. If you can't sign for 1 year, even, that's not good. I hope not.
I think labeling it as a hot take is probably accurate. I mean, it hasn't happened recently. I don't believe for the Falcons. I know it happens from time to time for teams. And for me, the player or players I threw out there, and we kind of talked about this last week, Alex, I think it's potentially one of the 2 defensive linemen, Taquan Graham or Adi Ogundeji. And for me, and one of the things I noticed, and again, I'm one of those guys that, again, since the coverage sometimes is limited on what we get out of, rookie minicamps and whatnot, I overanalyze pictures, the photos that you get from some of these things. And I noticed Adi Ogundeji standing up in one of the formations on defense. And for me, and again, said this last week, I don't see him as a stand-up 3-4 edge rusher. And again, maybe, we said that the defense is fluid, defensive line's fluid and multiple, but I just don't necessarily know where he fits in right now. So I have some concerns. Maybe I'm completely wrong on him, but he's a guy I think maybe, they put on and they're not going to use this term, it's from the old regime, but the Plan D program, and hopefully try to stash him on the practice squad. I'm not sure whose radar he was high on. Again, I thought he was overdrafted, but he's the type of guy that I think maybe doesn't make it, since I think they do have a lot of bodies on the defensive line that could potentially deserve to make the 53-man roster. So, but again, don't disagree that you think it's a hot take. Jake, would you keep that order the same, or would you maybe label that as a warm take and have someone else as a hot take?
I would probably keep the order the same, but I'll say it for different reasons.
Yeah, be your own person.
I think the front office highly prioritized guys who, just to put it not that nicely, aren't idiots. And I think they wanted a lot of guys who were pretty sure to at least be somewhat of contributors. So, I understand the element of Ade or Taquan maybe, not being ready just quite yet, but I think they aimed for guys who were in some way going to contribute. Maybe one of those guys would be practice squad guys. But I think they came into that draft with a purpose that they were going to get guys who they thought were quote unquote bust proof as guys can get, with high character, things of that sort, unless some of these undrafted free agents just start going absolutely nuts. I would say that would probably be the hottest one. Avery Williams, that one's close for me. I would love to see it, but it's definitely a stretch. It's a long shot, but it's a bold take. So I can't disrespect it. Yeah,
that's what we're here to do right now. And again, I think if it's close between Adi Ogundeji and a guy like Jonathan Bullard, you're obviously going to keep the rookie on the rookie contract. So there is a margin where those guys kind of have over a vet. So. Again, but that's what we're here for. We're here to give bold predictions. Jake, I'll let you go. What are your 3 takes that you want us to rank?
Okay. So I had Richie Grant does not start at safety to start the season. Drew Dahlman does not start for the season opener. And I have Kyle Pitts ties or passes Jeremy Shockey and Rob Gronkowski respectively, to have the second most receiving yards, which he would pass Shockey for, and the second most touchdowns ever by a rookie tight end. That's 894 yards and 10 touchdowns. Just for a reference point, though, Evan Ingram had 722 when the Giants had Odell and Eli Manning. I think that was back in 2017. So that's just a reference point for that. But those were the 3 that I had.
Alex, I'll let you go first with these.
Okay. I'd say I'm going to go Richie Grant cool take, because that one just hurt. Like, that's it felt personal.
But Jake's a fan of Richie, isn't he?
He is.
I love Richie Grant. So absolutely.
And then I would say, Drew Dahlman, lukewarm, and then the hot take would be Pitts breaking those records, or I guess becoming the second on those records.
I got you.
I just think that so I'll let you go, Matt, because once I reveal my bold takes, then you guys will be like, oh, I was kind of basing your take rankings off of my own and what I believe. So it'll make sense after I say mine, but go ahead.
Well, for me, I don't know if I think you can label all of them kind of cool to lukewarm almost. Again, with the Kyle Pitts one, things change if the Falcons, and it's a big if, trade Julio Jones, because I think it's more attainable than if Kyle Pitts will be one of the more central figures in the offense rather than probably the number 3 option that works in. But I guess if gun to my head, I had to rank these, probably go Drew Dahlman as the cool take. Kyle Pitts as the lukewarm take, and then Richie Grant as the hot take, just because. And when he was first picked, I was like, well, maybe again you're gonna work him in. You have two veterans in place, in Eric Harris and Deron Harmon. But I just don't know how he doesn't see the fielder. I think he's clearly the most talented, most versatile too, which I think is going to be big. And so that's why I'd be surprised if he doesn't start right off the bat. But it's close. It's close between the Pitts and the Richie Grant. But I'll say Richie Grant, the hot take. Kyle Pitts breaking the record, lukewarm, just because I think he really is the real deal. And even if Julio Jones is there, again, he's going to be on the field with how much Arthur Smith loves 12 personnel. I think he's going to get those targets. And then Drew Dahlman, despite what we said a couple weeks ago, I don't think it's a strong take to say the fourth round pick doesn't start the season opener. I guess that's the important caveat there, because he could start later in the season if Hennessy struggles.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll split it right down the middle. I had Richie Grant as the lukewarm take. I do think Richie Grant is easily – I don't know about easily with Deron Harmon in the fold, but I think he's one of the more talented safeties on the roster. Yeah. I don't know if the Falcons are going to go into this season valuing Eric Harris's, leadership intangibles and things like that and say, he's a rook, let him sit for week one. I really don't know. Arthur Smith kind of feels a little old school in that sense. I don't know if he'll go that route. Dean Pease obviously is an older guy. I don't know if he'll go that route. But that was my lukewarm one. I had Drew Dahlman as the cold one, and I had Kyle Pitts as the hot one. I don't know. I guess when you're talking about a guy breaking records, that's a little spicy. Another one I just thought of while we were sitting here talking about it that I kind of wish I'd used instead of the Pitts one. How about this one? Felipe Franks makes the roster instead of A.J. McCarron.
Ew. Just shut up.
Dude, here's the thing. I hated Felipe Franks, and then the Falcons picked him up, and I just had to do a complete 180 and be like, hey, he's not that bad.
I think so. Over AJ McCarron, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only way I see him making it is if they kept three quarterbacks, which I don't know if that's their forte, but maybe Arthur Smith would.
That bum is going to be on the practice squad. There is no way he makes the roster.
No, genuinely. And I'm going to be nice to Felipe Franks, and I don't like Felipe Franks. I have to like him now, I guess. But if he comes out and he just genuinely lights the preseason on fire, I guess I could see it. But other than that, I think they're just going to go with McCarron. But it's something to consider, at least, because Felipe Franks at least has something about him that makes him special. He's very athletic. He has a great arm, and he's big. And AJ McCarron is just he was captain handoff at Alabama and won 3 championships, which, I guess that's good for him. But, unless he comes out and just absolutely lights up the preseason, they're going to go with McCarron as the backup.
Don't forget, too, he's got a hot wife as well.
Ask Brent Musburger.
He's winning there. Yeah, Brent knows all about that. All right, Alex, give us your 3 spicy takes.
Okay, so I do have a correction. I don't know why I said Richie Grant cool take. That was the hottest take. I apologize. I definitely missed.
Oh, you're fine. No, you're good.
So,
yeah,
but you know what
I meant. Yeah, I did.
Okay, so mine is Darren Hall will be the first backup boundary cornerback. So you could, consider him CB3, but I don't think he starts as the nickel. I think if Fabian Moreau or AJ Terrell gets hurt, he will be the first one in. No rookie will record a sack in the entire season. And then 4 rookies start in week 1. So have fun with that.
Well, all right, let me take this one first.
Okay.
You went from I'm freezing over here to I am roasting, just in a matter of that last take. So the no rookies getting a sack, right? That was one of them. Because it comes down to either an undrafted guy totally comes out of nowhere, or Taquan Graham and Audio
or safety blitz.
Or
you got to consider that. Yeah,
safety
blitz.
All right. Yeah, I overlooked that fact. All right. Okay. It's a little bit warmer in here now. It's a little bit warmer. That's all right. I'll give that a lukewarm. What was the first one again?
Darren Hall will be
okay. That's the cold one. Yeah, for sure, in my opinion, because I think that's very likely. And then Sorry, say the last one more time.
4 rookies will start in week 1. And this is just offense and defense, so outside of special teams.
Yeah, I guess I'm still going to go hot on that one, even though, again, that's probably not as hot as my first reaction made it seem. Because there's a scenario where obviously Kyle Pitts is starting, very strong scenario where Richie Grant starts. And then it comes down to, I think, the offensive lineman, really. But yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go. The cold take is why?
Darren Hall.
Yeah, Darren Hall, first outside backup cornerback, and then no rookies getting a sack is lukewarm, and then lastly 4 rookies starting is the hot take.
What do you think, Jake?
I have to agree with that because I'm in the camp that believes. So I'm not as hard on Isaiah Oliver as a lot of people are, but I am in the camp that believes that with the fact that you can save almost $2.2 million by cutting him, that he absolutely is on the chopping block. Kendall Sheffield, let's be honest, he was bad last year. Isaiah Oliver, he might get cut. Kendall Sheffield, not that good. I really don't think Darren Hall being CP3 is out of bounds, especially, I know NFL teams don't play favorites, but Kyle Hoke is the defensive backs coach at San Diego State, who's John Hoke's son. And, I'm sure he's got an extended look at him. I don't think that's too out of bounds. So I'm going to go with the same order Matt had.
Yeah, I don't. Not much else to add. I mean, again, I think with Richie Grant, we talked about it last week. I think Dean's going to have a lot of fun with him. He's gonna turn him into a chess piece, and seeing how Richie was used at UCF off the edge, I do think if any rookie gets a sack, because I don't think Taquan Graham will get a sack. I don't think Ade Ogundeji will get a sack. I don't think any undrafted free agent is going to surprise us. So I would say Richie Grant gets one. But again, I think it's possible. So lukewarm. And then, Darren Hall, again, that's the floor, is that he's the outside cornerback backup to likely Fabian Morrow, or again, Isaiah Oliver starts there, and then in nickel sets, my expectation is, Oliver, becomes that nickel corner a la Logan Ryan. I think that's the perfect comp, and that's how I see Dean using Oliver. And then, I'm with you, Jake, on Kendall Sheffield. And I know Pro Football Focus put out their little depth chart prediction for the Falcons this week. And for whatever reason, I don't know what film they were watching on Sheffield. Even the grading model had Sheffield ranked as one of the worst cornerbacks. Why would they do that to us? Why would they hurt us like that and put Sheffield outside cornerback? Because I think, again, he might be on the roster bubble, honestly, depending on, maybe a guy like Ty Hall, who people have probably forgotten at this point. They signed him to a contract. Marcus Murphy. I mean, there's challengers there. And if Sheffield doesn't, cut it on special teams, which I think is how he's going to have to keep his job and then potentially, stay in the mix at cornerback, if he doesn't cut it there, who knows? Maybe they move on from him. And then the 4 rookies starting, again, that's the one that gives me the most pause, even though I started off by saying it's the hottest take, because it all comes down to that offensive line and Jalen Mayfield, and whether their plan for Jalen Mayfield is to throw him right out there early, or to have this be a true developmental year because he's making a transition to a completely new position, on a completely new side of the ball at left guard. That's my biggest worry spot for me as far as their offense goes right now, is what to make a left guard. And for me, I still think Matt Gano is the betting favorite. But again, all great takes. It'll be fun to look back on this at the end of the season to see, which of these, came true and how hot or cold they truly were. So again, that'll wrap up our show. Appreciate everyone that listens to this. As always, be sure to, rate and review the podcast. Be sure, if you're not already, to subscribe to the podcast. Haven't done this before, but I apologize. But anything you guys want to plug on the site going this week? Obviously, Alex is always cranking out articles. Anything upcoming that you want to mention, Falcons related, Alex or Jake?
Go ahead, Jake.
You know how my articles go. I just kind of think of them and then they go out. I don't have anything planned really.
Yeah, I don't have really anything too planned, but one thing I will continue to do is I'm doing just a roster breakdown of, pretty much every single position. I think I just did offensive line. I think that just wrapped up all of the offensive one, which shouldn't be that more interesting. Defense is much more interesting in my eyes just because of all the depth that along the defensive line. I mean, that's going to be a jungle. I mean, what a battle that the interior and, that hybrid defensive line is going to have. I mean, it's going to be interesting in camp. So that's what I'm putting out regularly. So look at that.
Yeah, also make sure you guys are checking out the site on that. We'll be back next week. Probably going to focus on, the Julio Jones situation, being that, the June 1st fateful day, which potentially something may or may not happen, is upcoming. It's the last show before that date. So we'll talk a little bit about that, maybe talk about a Grady Jarrett contract extension or restructure and what that might look like. And then I think we have plans for a couple fun, interesting segments potentially we'll roll out. So again, as always, make sure, you're subscribed, you're catching the show every week, you're following the Twitter at Talkin Birdy Pod, and also following us on Twitter. So for Jake Gordon, Alex Lord, I'm Matt Carley. We're Talkin Birdy. And as always, go Falcons.